With quorum?
Yeah, that's right.
I'd like to get started, hopefully, folks will join us. Carry on, so, one more minute.
Well, we're not all things considered, yeah.
Good. I think it's such a big deal. I want to get to some of the questions. Been lagging a little. Okay. Time is 6:34, and I'm calling to order the October 24th meeting of the Human Relations Commission. Our first item is the roll call, so if Carrie would be so kind to call the roll.
Of course. Felix?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
I'll note that Connor's not here yet.
You ready to ride? Connor, say here.
Do you hear your name in the hallway, Connor? Amir?
Here.
Laney? Here. Dima? Here. Edgar?
Here.
And we'll note that Kate is here, ex officio Kate is here. Yes. And Megan is here for Michael tonight. Welcome. I think that is everyone.
Okay, very good. We have a quorum, and we will proceed then with the next item, which is approval of the agenda. And I'll just ask folks if there are any, you want to run a packet? Okay. If there are no revisions, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dina, thank you. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any go against? No abstentions, motion carries. And we are on then to brief announcements from staff, commissioners, and liaisons. Carrie, if you might start us off with any staff announcements.
I am happy to. Last month, we talked about Neighbors Night Out that was coming up. Neighbors Night Out happened. We had 115 parties throughout town. So thank you to those of you up there that hosted parties. Appreciate it. I hope you're all were able to get to some in your neighborhoods. Great turnout, lovely day. We've gotten really lots of feedback, so happy to be collaborating with UC Davis, ASUCD, and this year Yolo County joined in as one of our partners. So that was great.
And you're understating your own role in that success.
No. Last month, Kevin had mentioned one of the proclamations that City Council had done, so I've decided to just, at each of the meetings, announce proclamations that have been given out or will be given out by City Council so that everybody is here as aware. On October 15th, we had, and some are more sort of applicable to HRC and some are not, but I'll just share them all because everybody should be recognized. We have both recognition of our outgoing and our incoming poet laureate. So we have a new poet laureate who has I believe, a 3-year term. So excited to be able to work with her and bring her into some of the HRC events. We recognized Indigenous Peoples Day, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Filipino American Heritage Month. So that was on October 15th. On November 12th, we have the anniversary of Sahaya, which I'm not really familiar with. It's a local organization, and I can send you guys the link if you'd like to learn more. Recognizing Hue Garden, which is a garden that somebody's created on the Greenbelt that's very lovely for people to go and visit. It's been in place for, I think, nearly 50 years. Native American History Month. We're working with somebody over at Yochadihi to come and receive that. Veterans Day. Shop Small Saturday, which is encouraging people on the Saturday after Thanksgiving to shop at our small businesses, local businesses, etc. So we're recognizing the work of our small businesses in town. Records and Professional Support Month, which is recognizing our police department professionals who do work in the records department. And lastly, we're going to recognize the Downtown Artery for their 50-year anniversary. So, lots of celebrating.
Thank you, Karen.
Those are my updates.
I have just a couple announcements, if I may. The first is that I understand, speaking of Carrie, that there's a birthday. Would you care to confirm or deny?
I don't know, it's getting hard to confirm. On Saturday, yes, I'm very excited. It's on a Saturday this year. So, oh my goodness, you guys are so, you guys are very kind.
Charity's late.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys are very, very thoughtful. Thank you.
Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
Happy birthday, Karen.
Thank you. Well, that was very sweet. Thank you guys.
I know we'd have to delete the video. We're not allowed to do that.
I appreciate you all very much. Thank you. Everybody here.
We appreciate
Whenever we
you.
have them speak, you're gonna come help. Thank you guys. It's very sweet.
Then a couple other just brief announcements. I wanted to thank Alan Hirsch for the invitation. It was extended to HRC members to attend the national conference of the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom that took place in Sacramento a couple of weeks ago. I unfortunately was not able to attend, but I trust that it was. Oh, it's this Sunday. Oh, okay. I knew that I had a conflict, and I thought it would be best. In any event, thank you, Alan, for the extending the invitation. Certainly a deserving cause in the service of peace building in the Middle East. I think in terms of announcements, that kind of does it for me. Do others have additional announcements they would like to share? Kate?
I just want to report out about the, a couple things. The superintendent's student advisory on combating dehumanizing language, symbols, and behaviors has now had its second meeting, and it's really just a beautiful progression of process where young people are defining both what they think the causes of all these behaviors in our schools are, and are beginning to then talk about actions that can be taken, and the idea is that with the superintendent's support and following them essentially, that there'll be a campaign across the district to address dehumanizing language and symbols and actions. And we have a very diverse group of students that keeps getting more diverse as we add more students in. But I just want to say it's progressing beautifully, and I love the way they're thinking, and I hope that I'll have more to report. And today, in fact, they did some recordings with some other students, some podcast recordings for teachers to learn about their experiences. So more to come on that. And then we're in the middle of, we're launching a fellowship for teachers to learn about Jewish American history through the Weizmann Museum of American Jewish History. And we're launching a partnership with UC Davis, Professor of Islamic Studies, and we're going to be able to have our teachers participate in some on-campus and get credit for participating in the lectures that are the Jews and Muslims, past, present, and future lecture series, and then some other lectures we'll be organizing ourselves just for our staff. So the process is evolving to build the knowledge of our teachers and our staff of both histories, communities, and related histories.
Nice, thank you for that. And Rainey?
I've got two, I think, unrelated things. The first is we have our rainbow crosswalk in front of Da Vinci High, which gets painted with chalk paint every June and then sort of lasts as long as it lasts. And with the rains coming, it won't last a whole lot longer necessarily. But anyway, we had graffiti on it that a student, one of the heads of the gay student union at the school, found the graffiti on there. And so it was, you know, anti-LGBTQ graffiti. It was reported by the student to the office. It was immediately cleaned off, and the principal and/or the district immediately ordered new paint to be able to paint the entire thing again. And we gathered the GSU at lunch immediately to just kind of process and think about and talk about it. So I feel like very sad that the thing happened, and also like a really strong response from everybody who had the power to do anything about it. And the other thing, I don't know if it's an announcement, but I just want to say, I'm not sure if everybody realizes, but since the Supreme Court grants past decision, which said that cities have the right to basically criminalize sleeping outside for unhoused people, many cities have determined that they would do that. And I think that the numbers are like the unhoused population in Davis has doubled since Oakland and Berkeley and other Bay Area cities have started to use that as a excuse for kind of moving people along. And our city and our county have both determined that we don't intend to treat our local unhoused people like that. And the more that I'm learning about that, the more just proud I am to be here in a place where we're trying to do what's right and to recognize like the housing crisis affects people to the point where they don't have any sometimes, and that's kind of all of us got into that, and all of us have to find our way out. So I just, and I think recently Governor Newsom has said cities really do need to take advantage of the grants past decision, and he's encouraging people to move unhoused people out, cities to move unhoused people out, and I think we're standing firm on our refusal to do that. So I just wasn't sure if everybody was aware, and I'm super proud of being part of the city right now, and they're standing firm about that.
Thank you, Laney, for those reports. Nice to hear the good spirit. Edgar, I think you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say a couple announcements. Tomorrow is Larry Idleon Day. He was an influential Filipino farm worker and activist. And so a lot of people don't always recognize the contributions of the Filipino community in the farm worker movement. And so something that we'll try to be highlighting on our Cesar Chavez Celebration Day later this spring. And then two upcoming events, the Dia de los Muertos events. There is going to be a large gathering at Cesar Chavez Elementary School on Saturday, November 2nd. From 3 to 7 p.m. And then I believe there's going to be another event at the Davis Cemetery, and that one is November 2nd, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So go out and experience all of that.
Edgar, did you say that was at the cemetery?
That one's at the cemetery. Yes, I think that one is the one hosted in conjunction with the city.
I just wanted to kind of report out that we had a really great event on Tuesday. It was the Evening on the Quad, a gathering for Arab culture and solidarity took place this week. It was a really beautiful event that brought together many groups on campus, community groups as well, to celebrate Arab culture, provide resources, and build community for our Arab students and actually really anyone interested in Arab culture. We had traditional foods, music, and dance. I made and served food along with other community members, and it was nice to see that we had a couple of commissioners there as well. And we hope this will be an annual event, and more people will come. It was it had a really, really large turnout, and yeah, we were excited about that.
Good. Well, thanks everyone for sharing really some fine work. And Connor?
So I have mentioned before ASPN 3299, which is primarily the UC Union representing patient care and service workers. They are disproportionately people of color, women, and low income, and not coincidentally, they are one of the most mistreated groups of workers on campus, and they have been in bargaining for a while now, and their contract is expiring soon, and they have a strike authorization vote in a week or so. So it is quite possible that there will be actions around their contract demands, quite possibly including a strike sometime relatively soon. And whenever and if such actions occur, then people should go out and support the workers and support their needs and their demands. Hopefully, the UC administration accepts their demands and provides for their needs. But given the history of the UC with labor groups, especially with ASME 3299, there's definitely some concerns that the UC administration will not do that, at least not for a while, and not until some direct pressure is put on them through strikes and whatnot. So yes, if there's any actions in the near future or the far future, people should support them.
Okay, thank you, Connor. Seeing no further announcements from commissioners, we don't have our liaison tonight, and we will then move along to our next agenda item. This is general public comment for items that are not listed on the agenda. I think we should also allow folks to speak to items that may be on the agenda, but that they are not able to stay for. So with that invitation, I would ask any folks to come forward who would like to be heard for public comment.
I want to talk tonight about how we hold conflict. I don't think our goal is to eradicate hate. That's impossible. There'll always be angles of hate. We're threatened existentially. The challenge is how do we hold conflict? And the most conflictual time in society is during elections. Election period, because there's a lot of stake. People existentially are trying to run. There's a lot at stake. And I want to talk not about the national race, which we've hear the rhetoric and it's scary. But I want to talk about the Davis race. And in the process of the three ballot measures and the one district race, I have heard accusations that some of the candidates are anti-Semitic. This was shared with me by another candidate who I interviewed for my ballot flyer, which you have there. And they said basically, oh, this other candidate is a little anti-Semitic. He was talking about the candidate I've had at my Sabbath table, so it's not true. I've heard that happened, and they were approached by a number of people in the community and told this, and they thought that this other candidate thought it was perfect. I also saw that one of our city council persons wrote kind of an essay about his time in the city council, and he accused some of the people on the No on Q campaign of doing race baiting in the previous campaign. I understand those people, the No on Q are sometimes too aggressive, and I don't think they are appropriate, but race baiting is a bridge too far. We've seen that rhetoric used. And also, in one of the Q&As about, for the candidates, one of the candidates said basically the adults who come to city council and make public comments are like junior high school students, and he has lots of experience handling junior high school students, diminishing the people who come to city council are upset. We need to figure out a better way of handling conflict. And we can't throw around those terms so easily because they devalue the terms and they make when they really happen a problem. So I think that's important. I passed out to you my essay about healing Davis. And we have a real problem in Davis. We do not know how to talk about things. Our city processes have tried to control the anger and the rhetoric by suppressing their rhetoric. So you don't have as much voice in the inside voice. And when you don't have an inside voice, you use your outside voice. Those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change necessary, inevitable. We need to figure out how we can bring the conflict into our confines, into the civil society, and I think that's the real challenge we have here. We're not going to drive out aid. How do we basically put guardrails around our discussions and our dialogue so we can live together as a community in civil society? And then my essay will talk a little about the issue here. And I hope that will be on the agenda for the city in the next 2 years, because we need to work together. We have a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Others for public comment? Please, welcome.
First time I met this mic. Hi. First off, as a former member of this commission, and I want to thank all of you for your work on this commission. I know you all take time and energy out of your busy lives to be here in the pursuit of promoting tolerance and respect and equity in Davis, and to make Davis such a wonderful place to live. And so, first off, thank you, seriously. I'm here today because I was recently alerted about a group, I think they're called the Davis October 7th Coalition. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I was given information about a social media page that made me feel very scared. And it made me feel scared because, from what I understand, this is a group, a small group of people that are posting things that are very Islamophobic and very fear-mongering. And so I'd like to ask the commission to look into this and explore what's happening, because when I looked at this social media site, it made me very scared. It made me feel very triggered. I'm Muslim, and just for the record, I want to be clear that I worry about anti-Semitism and I worry about Islamophobia. I have a son who has a Jewish last name. I'm Muslim and my family is part Jewish. So all of the crap that's going around right now with this conflict in the Middle East, it's hitting home from different angles, and I worry. My husband and I both come from families that survived the war. His grandparents are Holocaust survivors. My parents escaped war to come to America. So we are as a family, very anti-conflict, pro-peace, and I think most people would say that they are. But from what I understand, this group is a small group, but we know that small groups can do a lot of damage. And so we mentioned, or someone mentioned, the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. I'm a member of the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. We are a group of Jewish and Muslim women who come together. We have difficult conversations, but our goal is to become friends and fight hate and division together. And sometimes it's easy to do that, and sometimes it's hard. Lately it's been hard because some of us don't have the same viewpoint about what's happening between the Israeli government and Hamas. And that's okay. We're fighting through it. And fighting through it in the sense that we're engaging in constructive dialogue, which I believe is actually a lot harder than going around and harassing whoever's doing the harassing, but like than harassing students, threatening to dox people, which I'm hearing that this coalition has been doing. So my request is that you look into this, take it seriously, know that people like me, and particularly brown women, look, I don't wear a hijab, I'm not even religious, but I'm brown, and I know what it feels like, to be scared to leave your home, because that was me after 9/11. That was me and my family. We were scared to lose our jobs because we saw it happen to our community members. We were scared to send our kids to school because we saw our kids getting harassed on very, very personal levels. And so when these things start to happen, even though it's a small group, it's very, very, very scary, and it's really, really scary when you wear your skin color everywhere you go. And so just look into it. You're all awesome, and thank you so much for this great work that you do here.
Thank you for your comment. Okay.
on the agenda, right?
No, you can speak now.
Hello.
My name is Patty Fong, and you co-sponsored my event in February, the Day of Remembrance for 9066. And I very much appreciate it. We had great media attention, big spreads in all the major newspapers, I think. I want to do it again. I'm getting a head start. As part of introduction, I've been your Tongwin recipient a couple of times. I went to the UC Davis Law School. I was part of the committee that commissioned the MLK terracotta statue. I do the Asian newspaper currents that you may see around. So I've been around, we started organizing in Davis when Tongwin died. So that's actually got me deep into the city activity. Anyway, so I would like to do it again because we had such good reception in this year's event. And there's a good movie that just came out, and frankly, I'm still having difficulty saying its name, Pinsu Torai. Oh, thank you. And it's a movie that was directed by someone out of San Francisco, focusing on the Ito family And it's actually been the best one I've seen in terms of overall picture of everything, all the issues that the Japanese American community suffered during World War II. And the filmmaker is giving me film rights. His business model is to use this as a fundraiser for Asian community organizations. And I said, no, we don't really need to do that. Can we just do it for free? He could charge us a fee for showing it, but he'd rather get his film out there. It's a long film. It's a 2-hour, 15-minute film. And Vet Memorial is available on the day, February 19th. Is the day that FDR signed the executive order that authorized the military to create an exclusion zone that was used as an excuse for white power, wrapping up 120,000 Japanese Americans and sending them over to, sending them into the middle of the country in prisons. Anyway, so I would like to ask the HRC, I know you guys are inundated with activities in the spring, but hopefully we could do it like we did this last year. And I think it was low energy, except for Carrie did all that food at the last minute. But it was so much appreciated by the community. And so that's my pitch to you. Theater fee, and Wednesday night's cheap night anyway. And insurance, those are the main things that I need coverage. And I think that having the city co-sponsor it really brings more attention, more credibility to the issue. And we need to keep this issue going because our presidential candidate just alluded to rounding up immigrants like happened in World War II. So we know what he's talking about. Thank you.
We were able to deal with the insurance issue and the fee last time, were we not? Yes.
No, actually, I paid the rental last
Oh,
year.
you did?
Because it was so late when I came to you. I came to you in January for a February event, and so we couldn't really, but Phoenix Coalition did the insurance.
Kevin, if this is something you want to add for discussion at a future agenda, we can certainly do that. And if it's an HRC co-sponsored event at the Veterans Memorial Theater, then it would be no cost because it's a city facility and insurance. So we can talk more about that.
Okay.
But I would need to know whether I should submit the application just to lock the reservation in, and then we switch the name later. Would that be the way to do it? Okay.
To be continued with city staff. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else then for general public comment? I'm seeing none. Or no, I'm sorry. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Lale Rastevarzadeh, and tonight also I want to talk about the disturbing activities of the Davis October 7 coalitions. This group also came to my attention recently. I'm a Davis alumni and also in touch with faculty and students. Apparently this group, since last year, they've been harassing and non-violence the students' encampment and protest in the school, and they're harassing the faculty, students, and basically whoever Muslim and non-Muslim that their allies that there are any talking about what's happening in that region. And I found it very disturbing because as we just in the first comment we heard that, you know, the fundamentalist group, the white supremacists, all these groups that try to divide us and try to hone on our differences and have the rhetoric of hate and violence, they have no space in a peaceful world, especially in Davis, that we are so proud to have this community that we have, try to make the dialogue, try to make the space to talk about our differences and through our differences become united. Since October last year, our community have tried so hard to make a space to talk about this traumatic event that is ongoing and has created trauma for many of us. Many of us have lost our relatives, our friends there, and keep losing them. Salam Shalom Sisterhood is one of those groups. Interfaith groups like Celebration of Abraham is another that we had last year, a great event, and also this year we are planning. Then in this environment, really there is no space for such a group. I didn't know about this group. Apparently this is a national group promoted by Fox News, and I highly recommend you just to check their Instagram. Check for Davis October 7th Coalition. All their posting are so disturbing and promoting violence and division. And something else I want to bring to your attention is that they are using the logo, the bicycle, which is a logo of the city, a symbol of the city of Davis. And this is another issue that many people may be misled by this logo, that this is something that's promoted or supported by the city. At the end, I ask you to take a look at this group and take necessary action to stop hatred and division in our beautiful Davis. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. Is there anyone else then for general public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to ask, well, actually I was going to ask Carrie if we received any written public comment, but I know that we did. And I have 2 emails received from folks who are likewise complaining of anti-Palestinian and anti-Arab racism. So those will be in the binder in the back, if anyone wants to take a look at those, but we have received those additional public comments. Okay, if there is nothing else, then Carrie, we didn't receive any other public comment that I'm unaware of.
No, just those 2 that are available in the back, as you mentioned.
Then we will bring this item to a close. We will have an upcoming item, 6A, public forum on recent hate incidents. So if there are other comments on that, they could be addressed at that time. I'm going to move then on to item 5, consent calendar. The one item on the consent calendar is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. I would just note that despite my best efforts, I was unable to find a single typo.
Yes.
Minutes of the prior meeting. But if anybody else has any comments, corrections, additions, etc.
Goal.
Thank you very much, Carrie. And I happily retire my nitpicking crown. Okay, any comment then on the item on the consent calendar? Seeing no objection then, the consent, do we need to take a vote on the consent? We need to take a vote on the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would like to not consent to the consent calendar?
We need a motion.
We need a motion. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion on the consent calendar?
Are we approving the minutes, or what are we?
This is the, yes, that's right.
So I move to approve the minutes.
Yes. Amir seconds, I'm sorry, Amir moves, and is there a second?
Second.
Seconds, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain. I wasn't there the whole meeting.
Any abstentions? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. So moving back then to the next item on the agenda. This is the public forum on recent hate incidents in the Davis community. As you know, this is a standing item that we have at every meeting, other than a special meeting, so we did not have it at our last meeting, which was a special meeting. But otherwise, this has been a standing item, and we invite folks to, primarily commissioners and also, of course, the public, to have a dialogue on issues that may have arisen. I'm aware of one that was, other than some of the things that have been alluded to, that was reported in the Davis Enterprise. The Davis Police Department made a hate crime arrest on October 1st in the parking lot of the 8th Street Shopping Center involving racial slurs and an assault. As I believe we already heard, and perhaps we'll hear further, the Commission, as well as the City Council, has received a number of complaints arising out of the apparently continuing community tensions around the armed conflict in the Middle East. And it's my hope that we might establish a committee tonight to look into some of these issues further when we get to the next item on our agenda. But I wanted to note, of course, that those are obviously other incidents of concern in this area. But I want to open it up to members of the commission, and also want to invite folks for public comment. It has been wisely suggested to me that we might hear public comment on items sooner in the discussion of an item than we have previously, and I think that is good advice. So I would like to kind of adopt that practice, and since it's a new practice that I'm not yet totally familiar with, I'll ask you all to remind me if I'm departing from that. But I would like to invite public comment now that we've sort of set the scene for the discussion. If there is if there are members of the public who would like to come forward to speak on this item. Mr. Hirsch, welcome.
Hi, I'm going to talk about hate speech, hate incidents, and hate things that happen every night in Davis. They're broadcast into thousands of homes. I spoke to you 2 years ago, in 2022, when people on Fox News were talking about the great replacement theory, that basically the Jews and people were encouraging brown people to come into the border, cross them, to take over America and vote in Democrats. This was pumped by Fox News. I come to you and ask that. I know this is the national media, but this is what's going on. This is the hate incident that happens every night, and people's minds are being confused and made angry and whatever. We need to address that. And as part of that, the acceleration of that, you've all heard of Project 2025 out of the Heritage Foundation, the Takeover of Loyalty. Well, there's a follow-on project called Project Esther out of the Heritage Foundation also. And Project Esther is an attempt to eradicate the Hamas support network. And it's out of this group called the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. This group is a Christian Zionist group that basically is culturally co-opting anti-Semitism and weaponizing it to attack first anyone who's protecting thinks the Palestinians have an issue, and then they're going to basically think they're accusing them. We're going to basically wipe out the Sunday people, wipe out religion. The Christians are basically think they're next after the Jews. This is what they're going to basically arrest people. They have 18 professors at UC Davis on their list. Plus professors all over the country on their list. This is their national Project Esther. I'll give you all the copies for you. This is the latest thing on the Heritage Foundation. This is real, and they have great hope that if Trump is elected, this will be real. We'll add that to the millions of Anne Franks that are going to happen when we start deporting brown people or threatening them, people will go underground. We have some real work to do here, but they should be aware of this. This is what's going on, and how anti-Semitism can be weaponized to attack all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Others wishing to come forward on the recent hate incidents in the Davis community? Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Scott Stewart. I made it a point to attend all 3 events that I knew of on October 7th, 2024 because of the deep rift that it's created in the dialogue. And as Alan has spoke to and others who are personally there, but I want to speak to the student assembly that was on noon by the Students for Palestinian Justice. And it was run by students. I arrived to observe it. And I am a sympathizer with the Palestinian cause. But I'm also a sympathizer with people who are in this community who are very interested in their Jewish heritage and are upset and confused and also at risk. So this is not a one-sided thing, but I did see, as I was observing the students, a group of half of adults, half students, about 12 people, about 25 yards away from the MU Plaza gathering of Students for Palestinian Justice. And at different points, the adults, or I should say the older people, would come around pointing their phones in the personal spaces of the student protesters, asking them intimidating questions over and over again, not stopping. The students had already instructed themselves not to pay attention and to avoid this. After a period of time, some of the students who were designated safety took their signs and just held them in the aperture of the phone so that the photographs would not be recording of the students gathered. We know that people who have relatives in the occupied territories are punished for social media postings. And I don't know whether this was October 7th Coalition or who it was, but it was a situation where the adults, the older example setters, are instigating and promoting hostility and creating and enabling this kind of activity in Davis on our campus. And it's not okay. You guys need to check in on this, and thank you. I wrote an article about the entire day, and I'll just give that to the clerk.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else who wishes then to come forward on this item of public comment on recent hate incidents in the Davis community? Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for all the work you do as well. My name is Ann Block, and I'm a 30-year resident of Davis. Before that, I also graduated from law school. In fact, I was a classmate of Patty's. I remember we both were a little bit involved in the anti-apartheid actions that happened in the law school. In all this time, however, I've never before observed as much hate and vitriol that is being directed to and suffered by one part of our community in particular, and that's our Palestinian and Arab neighbors, along with our Muslim neighbors, and those who are Jewish who are against Israel's genocide of Gazans, as well as others that are identifying as allies of these people, of these folks. And this hate, as others have already told you, seems to be mainly coming from or encouraged by the so-called Davis October 7th Coalition, but perhaps from others as well. The harassment and intimidation has been on the same or even worse levels as suffered by our LGBTQ plus neighbors and their allies, as you all know, which has come from Moms for Liberty's YOLO chair and her local associates. The October 7th Coalition has engendered local and both online and in person threats, harassment, physical assaults, and attempted violence. And, you know, the city, county, and UC Davis initiated the Hate Free Together collaboration to address the harassment spawned by Moms for Liberty. They have collaborated since then to denounce that type of harassment, and the bomb threats were made as a result, likely from out-of-towners. And a supportive gathering of elected officials occurred, and community members occurred in Central Park, as many of you probably attended. Our electeds have also collaborated with some of our Jewish neighbors to distribute educational materials about anti-Semitism, which is laudable and important. But why has nothing been done by our electeds to date about anti-Palestinian and anti-Arab racism and Islamophobia, or the anti-Semitism against Jewish folks who do not support Israel's genocide? Why has nothing been done about the local actors who are directly, verbally, and physically attacking our students, our UC Davis faculty, and our local Jewish, Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim community neighbors and their allies who have spoken up against the ongoing genocide, and who inflame and incite others to do the same? I was at the UC Davis encampment overnight when the leader of the October 7th Coalition came before sunrise to scream at and harass peaceful students still sleeping, defaming them as terrorists and photographing their tents and the student security who peacefully followed them without engaging. I was there also the following night when two young men prepared to hit golf balls into the encampment, which potentially could have caused really serious injury. Luckily, they were peacefully engaged and their attempt failed. The October 7th Coalition continues to incite, inflame, and encourage violence and other forms of harassment. It must be denounced. I hope this commission will do so, as well as the city council, and action taken to stop it. This is not protected free speech. It's intended to intimidate and terrorize those with differing views. And that's, of course, never acceptable in our city. And I hope you will do whatever is possible in your power to help end it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. If someone else coming forward, welcome.
Hi, I'm Amy Medavoy. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to say what I want to say clearly because I'm feeling pretty emotional about it, but I'm a Jewish member of this community. I'm also a dual Israeli and American citizen with very close ties to the land and the people in Israel, and also just disgusted by the way that the country is behaving. So that's just to set the stage. I haven't witnessed any of the things that I've heard people talk about tonight in terms of October 7th. I haven't witnessed any of it firsthand, but it's really heartbreaking to hear. And I think these divisions between the people who care about Palestinians and people who care about Israel just are in so much conflict, and it really helps no one. There are 14 million people living in Israel and Palestine, and what they need from us is for us to help them find a way to live together in peace, in justice, really, and to stop this war. In terms of anti-Semitism, well, and I really want you to know that there's not one Jewish community in Davis. There is a multitude of people, and there is nobody who speaks specifically for the Jewish community, because there are many of us with many different views. In terms of anti-Semitism, I believe really strongly that it is not anti-Semitic to criticize the Israeli government and the Israeli military for what they are doing. I have a lot of criticism, and I would challenge anyone to call me anti-Semitic. I think when we see wrong, we are bound by a duty to speak out. And yet, when there is true anti-Semitism happening in our city, which there is, and true Islamophobia happening, which there is, it has to be addressed, and I think it needs to be addressed through whatever formal ways the city has and the university has, rather than people trying to take it on themselves to address. And I would also just suggest that you really think about separating beliefs from actions. People can have whatever beliefs they have, they're allowed to talk about them, we need to listen to them. But when people's actions include harassment and threats and hostility, that should really not be allowed in any shape or form. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. I don't see anyone else approaching the microphone. I believe we have received the public comment that we will have tonight. And I will turn it back to the dais. This is an opportunity, obviously, for the commission to discuss both what we've heard from the public and other issues that might be on your mind. I would like to suggest again, without any ability to direct that this is an issue that we continue to hear about from many perspectives. And it does seem to me that it is worthy of sort of further inquiry and examination. I think it's difficult to do it in this kind of format. So I think it might be worthwhile if there's openness to thinking about that, either in this item or when we get to a discussion of the commission work plan and the creation of what I continue to insist should be called committees rather than subcommittees. But when we get to the discussion of committees, it seems to me that this is one that we could well consider. That said, I want to open it up to folks for the comments.
I'd like to comment, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I do think that we must address the comments that we've received, and I want to know that we have two that were received that were meant to be part of public comment, but we received several others before today, talking about this October 7th coalition. I just want to note that because I don't know that everybody knows that we received those, and so I think we must take it seriously based on also some of the things that we received in those letters. I do think that we should either recommend a subcommittee that will either focus on this as a sort of an urgent matter, or I will be proposing a subcommittee in 6B where this could potentially be part of that subcommittee and be an immediate item that that subcommittee would need to address. I also wanted to note that we did receive a newsletter called the Anti-Semitism Report. This is somewhat separate, but related. It came from an email, Davis Anti-Semitism Report at Gmail. Looking at the settings of that newsletter, which you can do because it was sent through MailChimp, it actually is from October 7th Coalition. So I think we need to recognize that this email and this newsletter that was sent to us was from the October 7th Coalition. And if we receive continual emails from that email address or just that newsletter alone, if you subscribe to it, because you could from the email that you received, that this is from the October 7th Coalition that has this Instagram account that we've been notified of. So just please keep that in mind. And then, yeah, I would love to be able to address some of this more in 6B under a subcommittee that I'd like to recommend. Hopefully I can go early on in that session just so that we can address how we want to deal with this particular matter.
Thank you, Dima. Others? Lainey, please.
So I'll just note that the Instagram has 8,000 followers, which just says something to me about the amount of people that are paying attention to this and seeing this information. Just adds like another level of urgency. I think it's not, I just look to see, is it like 12 people following it? It's like 8,000 people, so it's a lot of people for a local chapter or something, I feel like. And I wanted to ask, I know we have a representative from the university here. We always end up with this situation where, of course, what happens at the university affects what happens in the city and vice versa. But I feel like it's like respectful of us to defer first to the university about what they already know and what's already being done in terms of response to this activity that we're hearing about. So I wanted to see if the university has any information for us about that.
I can provide some information on the university's response for demonstrations and protests. So, and I can also provide the context of, along with Michael Villalobos, who is typically here, both of us are part of our university's emergency operations center management. So we serve as inclusion officers as part of this larger emergency operations organization at the university. In terms of the events that happened on campus on October 7th, from my vantage point, there weren't significant updates that were shared with the larger Emergency Operations Center group that I'm included in. More broadly, with respect to the university's response to protests and demonstrations, that's led by our Student Affairs Division. In particular, there's a student expression response team that includes a number of professional staff from Student Affairs who serve as the first point of contact on the ground when there are protests and demonstrations. Really, their priorities are around education, specific to university policies that might be in play, so things that might involve amplified sound, time, place, manner restrictions that are at the university. Bringing awareness to those policies with the hope that they can avoid violation of those policies, and also really approaching situations from a perspective of not trying to escalate. So I hope that's helpful information. If there are other specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, so I'll just point out that, personally, I don't have Instagram. I don't know exactly what they post, but I think that chasing a specific individual who runs an Instagram page seems like almost like a futile, just not a good use of energy. There is just so much hate going on online. Just like, are we going to start policing all of the Instagram pages on Davis that post nasty stuff? It seems like it's just not a good use of our time.
Yeah. So when we received the public comment regarding the Davis October 7th Coalition page, I actually went to my Instagram to look at the mentioned page, and the first thing that came up was an alert from Instagram asking me if I was sure I wanted to look at the page because I had previously reported the page. Now, it all came flooding back to me. When I first was selected for the commission, I wanted to follow pages, City Davis pages that I wasn't already following, and it was a simple search of City Davis that brought up the City Davis, or the Davis October 7th Coalition. One thing that was very misleading about it, and which alerted me, was the fact that they do use our city's, it's the same logo as the city's Instagram page, which was why I, much like many, of these followers, 8,000 people, clicked it, looked at it, and possibly even follow it without even knowing that it's unrelated to the city. So I definitely think that it's important for the city to be aware that there is a hate page out there using or masquerading as a city page. Yeah, I promptly, again, reported them and blocked the page because just perusing the last few comments, I couldn't believe they were still active. But just looking at the most recent posts, just vile, disgusting stuff. So, no, I do believe that we need to create a subcommittee, and definitely something that needs to be discussed is, pages like this that are masquerading as city-run pages or that misrepresent our city.
Go ahead, Kate. Appreciate what folks have shared so far. And I do think if it were only a Instagram page, it would be one thing, but the fact that it seems to have manifested as actual behavior and harm in the community makes me think it's more within our purview as an acting commission. although I think what's in our purview also, we always are debating, I mean, I'm trying to understand what as a commission we're allowed to do. And I sort of wonder about the question about being asked to make a statement again, whether making a statement is something we as a commission can do, and I know we've talked about that over the years, or whether that's something that city council is reserved for city council to do. But I would also imagine that a subcommittee would work on those things. I wanted to add to the discussion something related, but not exactly the same, which is that I encountered graffiti on Monday afternoon after having heard reports of graffiti from a tagger that was leaving CHEMS as the tag. At least two of our schools had those tags, and I wasn't fully aware of what the actual hateful tags were on our campuses, but Monday afternoon when I was at the co-op, Davis Food Co-op, on the storefronts that are unoccupied, that are slightly north of Upper Crust Bakery, H&R Block, Ken's Bike and Ski, moving along were canvas tags with a swastika and the word Hitler painted in spray paint on those glass windows. And I realized I had no idea how to report those. I'm on the Human Relations Commission, and I took pictures and sent them to Carrie, basically. I suppose I could have sent them to the police department. I was driving quickly between meetings, but that would have been my next step had I had a few more minutes, but because I have Carrie's text phone number, I texted them to her. But it concerned me that it wasn't immediately clear to me how I could report them in a way that would be counted and taken care of, and that it made me wonder about our own ability to advocate for better reporting systems in the district or whether in the city, or whether I'm just sort of ignorant. But it brought to mind that need, and also the fact that it's everywhere, it's all the time, it's prevalent. And not lost on me that Upper Crust Bakery is run by a Jewish family, very, very much identified as a Jewish bakery in many ways, in the proximity of that graffiti.
Yeah, I agree, Kate, in terms of, I do think it would be advantageous for us to, as a committee, work on figuring out how to make it easier for people to get this information into the city. So I do think that's something we need to address. I wanted to address some other things, so I'm glad, Lainey, that you mentioned the 8,000 followers. I think that is something we can't ignore. And then also, Amir, I wanted to address your note that we can't necessarily go after just people speaking badly on the internet. There's so many of them. I think that there's a distinction here, though. Yes, there's plenty of people on the internet who are saying, slurs and horrible things. But as we saw in a couple of the screenshots that were sent to us, these, especially in their stories, so they're using the stories, which disappear, so unless you screenshot them, you can't see them, but they last for 24 hours. In some of the stories that were sent to us, the screenshots of them, there was incitement of violence. There was bring your pitchforks to campus, vigilante kind of language about coming and doing citizen arrests on campus. To me, that goes beyond just saying mean things. I just want to note that this week I actually met with one of the uncles of one of the students on the East Coast who, I think they were in New Hampshire, who were shot, and one is now paralyzed, and two of them are also recovering from those injuries. I think if we ignore this, we can't be certain that because we ignore it, something like that won't happen because of people reading that and feeling emboldened to do that kind of behavior on our campus. So I think we need to think about what can happen if people read this and think of it as an opening invitation to come and do harm to students, to faculty, to people who are doing nothing but trying to use their First Amendment rights to speak about what they disagree with. So I just ask that we think about it in that lens and think about it really seriously.
I totally agree. I don't think that we as a society should ignore that. I just don't think that it's a good use of our time, because then, we get complaints about one group and then we get complaints about another user and another user. I think that we should use our time to build bridges as opposed to trying to hunt down specific individuals. And if they do incite violence, then there is police and other institutions that should be taking care of that. I think that it's just going to suck up all of our time, which is already as is so hard to move anything around here. So.
Okay, I think we've heard from most folks, but Connor, did you have anything?
Yeah, so I do think that there are a lot of situations, and in fact, most situations, where trying to build bridges is the better route to go. But I do think that there are particular situations, especially around direct physical threats, where it is questionable if you should only try to build bridges or if you do need to try to address the harm being caused in other ways, even if you're also simultaneously trying to build bridges as well. And I think we have seen this in Davis already with Moms for Liberty. So that is a similar situation in a lot of ways, as one of the public commentators mentioned. And again, it's a situation where I think there's a lot of people who probably have some transphobic ideas that you can talk with and try to present why those ideas are harmful and why they should support trans rights. But there are direct physical threats and risks coming from a few people in Davis that still need to be addressed, even if you're also trying to have those types of dialogues. And I think the community has done that to a large extent with Moms for Liberty, and that type of reasoning should be applied to other situations as well. Because, as we also know with Moms for Liberty, even when it is just a few individuals, if they are engaging in certain types of behavior that most people who are espousing harmful ideas are not engaging in, then that does rise to another level. And I don't think there's many people who are doing that, and I'm hoping that number does not increase, though, as we've also heard concerns tonight, especially with the national situation. It's certainly possible that those types of things will increase, but I do think that there are a fairly small number of people engaging in that type of behavior, and that type of thing is important for the city to be addressing.
Councilmember Bartia.
Yes, I am really glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm glad that people are taking this seriously, and thank you also for our public commenters that have come forward and have their voices added to this conversation. I agree 100% that, chasing down every single Instagram page and is a futile act because, as Connor mentioned, the Moms for Liberty, we've been dealing with that for 2 years now, and it has caused, it's not a trivial matter what happens on social media, because we have had bomb threats, we have had our teachers who are fearing for their lives, we've had, there's real effect that comes from some of the more radical ideas that gets, then spread out on a national level, and then we're not only dealing with our own community, but we're dealing with folks who are coming in from the outside and causing a threat. But I do think that it is very, very challenging to sort of address everything that comes forward. That doesn't mean that this commission or that our community should not do something, because we do need to speak up, and we do need to support the folks who are feeling the pressures and who are feeling the threats of the, some of the more hateful ideas that are out there. Our Jewish community has felt very neglected, and they've voiced that they have not felt supported in the anti-Semitism that they have been feeling. And the city council did put out a couple of statements when they felt, when that was brought up to their attention. We have, making statements, I think, is one of the few things that we can do, and there's really not a whole lot more that we can do because of people's free speech, and that becomes very, very frustrating. But I think it is incumbent on us as a community to stand up and let our members know when they are feeling that they are being singled out and they're feeling unsafe, that they can, look around and see that their community members are in fact listening and hearing their concerns, and that there are people in the community that are stepping forward and speaking up for them. I mean, speaking up for each other is one of the few things that we can actively do, and I do think that that is something that maybe we can consider thinking about ways to do that. I know when there was, when Moms for Liberty seems to be like an ongoing thing, but it's not the only thing. We dealt with this with the anti-Asian rhetoric when we were in the middle of COVID, and there were people who were genuinely afraid of like just going to the grocery store, and there were people who had stories of terrible things that had happened to them when they went to the grocery store. But I think that they did take some comfort in having their community speak up for them. So I don't know if you want to move on for, talking about it as a subcommittee, if you want to move this conversation to that portion of the agenda. But I hear sort of where everyone is at in this conversation, and I'm really glad that we're having it.
Thank you, Councilmember. I would like to sort of move forward with that suggestion and propose that we have a further discussion in the next item. This is a public forum item. I think we've had that forum. We do have a work plan conversation coming up in the next item. This is not the only subject that needs to be discussed, but it obviously is a timely one. And there are some other timely ones as well. So unless folks sort of feel differently about it, I suggest that what we do now is bring this item to a close and proceed with the next item, where we consider the possible creation and scope of a committee to address these issues, and I'll say issues because I think it's really plural, and also in context with some other work that we've had on our horizon for a while. So a couple of things noted on the agenda specifically, and then other proposals that I think may come forward. I know, for example, that Amir has been working on a suggestion that he would like to also bring forward, and I want to make sure that we have time to address that because it is also timely. So, if there is sort of general consensus on that, I propose that we bring this item to a close, move forward to the next item, which is 6B, the commission work plan and creation of subcommittees. So, with that very long-winded transition, I want to move then to that discussion. There are two specific items that are listed here: land acknowledgement support civil rights ordinance process. And I guess I want to get a sense of whether folks want to discuss those now, Lainey? Oh, okay, I think we sort of had public comment. I'm sorry, go ahead, forgive me.
Are we on to the next item?
I'm hoping we are on, yes. And we could, I want to just kind of set the stage and then that's the protocol I'm trying to follow, is that we're introducing the item, then we're opening up for public comment, and we're just trying to get a sense of things. But Lady's suggestion is well taken, which is this might be an appropriate opportunity to have public comment at this time with that introduction of the item. And I would welcome anyone to come forward if they would like to comment on this item 6C. 6B, forgive me. Oh my God. I'm going to stop talking pretty soon. Okay, I do not see anyone coming forward unless Mr. Hirsch is coming forward. I think Mr. Hirsch is coming forward.
Yes, thank you. I want to pass out something, because we are about to enter what could possibly be some of the darkest times in American history if Trump is elected. And I lived through the last time, which was pretty dark. And I saw how this community was traumatized. The Saturday after the election, 500 or 600 people came together in City Park with candlelight and heard Rob Davis speak to give us comfort and hope. We may be going through the same sort of trauma, even more trauma with the threat to leave all the guardrails that already are. The Project 2025 fire the faculty administration and how these radicals brought in their only loyal to Trump without the Constitution. The deportation of 20 million American residents, lots of Ayn Rands created and hidden in the community as a result, and Muslim bans and who knows what else is going on. So I'm going to pass on people gathered together, convened by the Phoenix Coalition in the December after that, and it developed what I call a wall of fears of all the concern they have in the community. And we maybe have to do the same thing to kind of hold ourselves together, and maybe that's first on the agenda. And I hope you don't kind of lock yourself in, you leave something up for your December meeting, your November meeting might be really, really important to deal with things. So I'm going to share with that, and also a little of comment from Lucas Ferris of what happened with the gathering that happened too. And also in terms of the commissions, I think you shouldn't just restrict yourself to real actions. Just talking about things and exposing things, and exposing Instagram posts and exposing people in music has value. And I think the commission needs a media strategy. The city needs a media strategy to expose this and discuss this sort of stuff. Because people exposed will act differently. And we need to do that. We need to push back on that. I think that's a value. So I'll share this from 2016 with you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Others to comment on item 6B? Okay, seeing none, I want to kind of open it up, and I want to just sort of generally acknowledge that I think a point that was alluded to, which is that as we go about the creation of subcommittees and the development of work plan, or further development of work plan, I think we always keep in mind that whatever plans we make can be set aside in order to respond to urgent issues as they arise. So I don't think we lock ourselves in and exclude ourselves from addressing issues, and I think we are wise to be flexible and responsive to what's going on in the community if we adjust accordingly. So, excuse me, there are two items that are specifically listed, the land acknowledgement support the civil rights ordinance process. I'm kind of a mind to suggest that maybe what we might do is get to a discussion of a potential subcommittee or committee on the issue that we've been discussing, because I want to make sure we have time to do that. It's coming up on 8 o'clock, and the other two items don't, the two specific committee ideas that are listed here, land acknowledgement support, and civil rights ordinance process, are perhaps not as time sensitive. I personally feel like the civil rights ordinance process is way overdue, but I would put that aside because I want to make sure that there's time for this issue and the other issue that I alluded to that Amir has been thinking about. So is that amenable to folks that we go into a discussion of that issue? And maybe before we talk specifically about the creation of a committee to deal with the topic of the evening, I want to ask Amir if this might be a good time for you to kind of brief us on some of the thinking you've been doing and some of the outreach you've been doing on a project that you might want to propose to the commission.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes. So I just want to share with this committee's project that I've initiated, and I would love to have the cooperation of the commission. So the project is called the Olive Branch Project, and it all stems from me biking aside Buda Creek Road. You know, that whoever was there saw that there are a bunch of olive trees, and like many other places around Davis, those olive trees are not being harvested. Right? So 2 years ago, me and a few friends of mine, we called the owner of those olive trees and asked him, hey, do you harvest those trees? He said, no. So can we harvest them? I said, sure. So we went, we harvested them, and we went to a local olive mill. We milled the olives, we got our olive oil, and it was awesome. Right? It was great. And then last year it didn't happen, and then this year I was just starting to think about that, and then it just, it just hit me that, olive oil, people, I was talking to a Syrian colleague of mine from medical school, and we just started chatting, and then we started talking about olive oil, and sure enough, he's, in Syria, his family, they have an orchard of olives, and then as soon as you start talking about oil, like everybody kind of easily comes around that. There is this force of not just food, but specifically olive oil. So what I want to do, and I've already kind of started that, is partner with UC Davis, the Olive Center that they have there, and get a community project where we harvest trees that no one harvests. They're, fruit just fall on the ground. We mill them at a local mill, and then we have an olive oil celebration, right? The thing that personally I like about that, it's about food, it's about olive, right? It's about olive oil, but the byproduct is, guess who loves olive oil, right? So I hope that it might be an opportunity to bring people around olive oil without making the bridge super obvious and helping people kind of come around that. And this is something that I'm definitely going to do. I'm just hoping that I can get the support of this commission, because I think that if we advertise that as a city initiative, it will have much more credibility and potentially greater reach. So that's my pitch.
Thank you, Amir. I just want to ask maybe if folks have any questions about that or want to discuss that further. But that is a potential project that a committee may look into further.
So maybe just a few more words. So the harvest comes. So right now we're at the beginning of the harvest season, the olive harvest season, and I've already reached out to the Olive Center at the university, and it seems like they're keen to collaborate, and it seems like it's relatively easy and straightforward. There's not a lot of, we don't need city funding in order to do that. And, you know, I can share some of the, you know, if you're interested, I can share some of the details that I already kind of know, but the process, I feel like the process is already in motion.
And, I mean, you're gonna have some further conversations
Yes,
with
of course.
the Olive Center.
Yep.
I just have a couple comments. So I too also love olives and have done, actually my husband does a lot of the actual harvesting and getting the olives ready to cure them. It's a little harder to get olive oil, but we have done the work to also get olives to a place where they can make olive oil, and it is lovely. One thing I would just caution on this is, I do think doing a food event, great. Bring people together, wonderful. I think if this is in regard to trying to bring people together around Israel and Palestine, I think there are a lot of things that are problematic with that. Olive trees are a symbol of resistance for the Palestinians. It is also their livelihood. In the West Bank, they are systematically being destroyed, the olive trees. That is part of the weaponry against Palestinians. So I worry about sort of creating some type of event that doesn't take that into account, and it's just let's get together, and this is somehow going to erase that part of the narrative. So I just say, you know, if that is something that this commission decides to do, please think about that part of the narrative. And I think if you do think about that part of the narrative, this might not seem like the easiest thing to do, because there will be feelings hurt when it's sort of thought of as like, oh, this is a fun event around food and around something that is currently being destroyed for Palestinians and their livelihood.
Other thoughts, comments, questions?
Just some questions. You know, I love having opportunities for people to gather. You know, is your anticipation that it would be like an open event for everybody to cover? Is there going to be targeted marketing? Is it, if it's a City of Davis event, is it just, you know, everybody come and harvest? I guess, you know, I want to make sure when people ask us, oh, the City of Davis HRC is going to back this up, you know, in case there is tense dialogue, do we have people then prepared to be there as well to help mitigate any type of dialogue that may happen? You know, I think it's a great idea. You know, I think there's a great opportunity. I just want to make sure that we plan cautiously then.
So I would say that yes, everybody would be welcome. Olives and olive oil play a huge role in lots of cultures around the Mediterranean. And I think that I know that it's very close and dear to many people's heart. And yeah, I mean, I would be very happy if we would have, you know, lots and lots and lots of people. But yeah, we sure, like if we want to take that and if you want to advertise it as an HRC, as a city event, obviously we need to think about more details.
Yeah, I just wanted to turn to city folks, and Gloria, I see you've got your mic ready, to see if there are sort of.
Yeah. I want to say that, like, you know, it's true that there's always complication when you bring people together. And I think that making sure that when we do have celebrations, that it is imperative that we, you know, bring all the truth into those celebrations, because otherwise, you know, you have to think about what the purpose is, right? So I always remember the very first event that I ever went to as a council member, and it was a celebration of the 150 years of the railroad, and it was a lovely celebration, and they never mentioned the Chinese in that celebration. And so I think it makes every event fuller when you have all the truth there. And so, and that you honor all of our humanity and all the things that bring us together, that make us a community. It just makes everything richer. And so I really like this idea. If we can do it, as Edgar mentioned, with good facilitation and good dialogue.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Lainey. Thank you.
I feel like as we've been like spending a year now trying to think what we could do that would like build some bridges in our community, it's been hard to figure out. First, we thought we should have direct dialogue, maybe facilitated by, the YCRC or something, between different people who have a broad variety of different opinions about the conflict, the war. I think a lot of people feel very uncomfortable about the possibility of doing more harm than good with that. So anyway, I think that this is an awesome possibility. I think the idea of getting people together to do something in solidarity and community without the purpose being to discuss conflict is a very powerful possibility. I've been to several things now that the Hate Free Together have sponsored through local artists in terms of having lots of different performers from lots of different backgrounds together and then some opportunities for dialogue. So I wonder if the Hate Free Together could be like a good partner in the way that they chose to do that and what considerations they took into account. And my final thought is just olive oil is expensive and there's a lot of people that can't afford it. And so I'm very interested in like just on a basic level, how much olive oil is produced by this sort of thing, and could it be donated to people who would really benefit from that, or could the celebration be in connection with the night market where a lot of people are getting free food that they need to sustain themselves right now, or just ways in which it would be like different groups of people coming together to do some good for the community and not just to benefit themselves. Like how could we add that in to make it something that that benefits the larger community? And I mean, I assume anybody who showed up would be benefiting instantly and learning something. I'd be very interested in just, I love agriculture, so I just want to like learn how this whole thing works. But I'm just wondering like how far-reaching the benefits could be if we want to do something like this. It seems like there's a lot of benefits potential.
Yeah, so I also think there would be a lot of benefits to this type of thing. I'm also very in favor of having more community spaces and community building, especially like third spaces, like places where people can just come together without like an expectation of having to like buy things or spend money. That is a very important aspect in society, and I think food is one of the like ways to create those types of spaces. I'm very in favor of the night market, as I've mentioned before, which has become like that type of community where it's both about giving out food and doing mutual aid, but also just gathering and socializing and whatnot. And I also do think there are a lot of benefits to this type of idea, especially around olive oil, especially if there's people who enjoy it but can't always afford it. I do think that this would need to be very intentional, especially if there is like a thought that there's going to potentially be people from different communities who might have some disagreements and some conflict coming out to this. So I do think that having maybe community like mediators or people who at least have some training in conflict resolution there could be helpful. And I also do think that acknowledging the structural questions around olives is important as well, because they are important to a lot of cultures, but there is very direct violence around olives that primarily impacts Palestinians as far as I'm aware. And that is something that could definitely come up, and that is understandable if it's something that people have a lot of feelings around. And trying to figure out how to incorporate that and address that, so not erase it, but also still hopefully have this type of gathering and event, even despite it, I think that is an important discussion.
I'd just like to add something. What it sounds like to me in some of these comments is that there's sort of two different things that we're talking about. Having an event that brings food at the centerpiece and brings people together and deals with food waste and food insecurity and allowing people to get olive oil, that is beautiful. I was actually involved in the founding of the night market. I care deeply about community. I care deeply about food insecurity and about food waste, and I'm constantly commenting about how we have way too many trees in Davis where food is literally could be eaten and is not. And there are good organizations working on that. And so I do think that's one thing. The other thing that's coming up is whether this can be an event to sort of bring people to have a peaceful moment together. And that's the part where I think everyone has said that. We have to be super careful about that if that is how we're going to build this event. Not only moderators, but I think that I would be very uncomfortable with an event like that did not honor the real situation that's happening in Palestine and the Palestinian olive trees. So if that's going to be part of it, then I would be much more comfortable. But I don't know if that was the intention of this idea as was brought up. And I don't know that that would, I don't know how much that would help. Again, would love to do the food event. I just have a lot of concerns about making it into an event that's about peace without being really clear about what's happening in Palestine.
Okay. A lot of good observations, reflections. Mir, what makes sense to you in terms of going forward? Do you want to see if there are folks who are potentially willing to kind of join a committee with you to look into this?
So I have a meeting scheduled with the directors of the Olive Center. I don't remember exactly when is that, but if folks are, I guess we need to make a decision whether we want to make it an HRC issue, and then we can, sit together, create a subcommittee and try to design it, or if we think that it's not appropriate, and then I guess, it's a little bit disappointing to me, but I'll move forward with a smaller production, try to do what I can do on my own. The thing is that it is time, right? So we will have more time hopefully next year, right? I mean, all the season comes every year. But for this season, right, we need to act fast.
Yeah, okay.
So if this does affiliate with the HRC, does it need council approval? Because that's what I'm worried about, right? Like all the logistics behind it. Even if we all agree, right, and we have a committee that wants to do all the work, how much are we allowed to? And so I think
you guys could make a decision that this is something that you're interested in and create a subcommittee to, I think, start exploring it. And council would need to give, final approval to put the city's name on it. So we would just bring that, those minutes back to council for approval.
So let's just hypothetically say this all moves forward. What would be a potential timeline? And does that meet the timeline that I'm trying to be realistic, right? Like, does it meet the timeline that?
No, that's a great question, because the timeline is mid-late November. So there are two potential weekends. It's like, I think like 16, 17 or 15, 16, or the following week, which is like 22, 23, something like that.
Technically, your minutes would need to be approved by you guys at the next meeting, and then I could get them in front of council as quickly as possible after that. I don't have the council calendar in my head right now, but if we were to meet, I guess it would probably go to council early December, if I'm thinking correctly.
So basically, it means that we will not be able to use, we won't be able to formally endorse such an event by the HRC and advertise it as such.
We would need council approval to do that.
Yeah, the latest date for council is the 19th of November. because I think they're back-to-back in November because of the last week. It's the 12th and the 19th.
Thank you, Gloria.
Or is it the 5th and the 19th?
It's definitely the 12th. We're meeting on the 5th, because that's election day.
Right.
Okay, think there was a sort of a general sense that Amir has brought forward an idea that has both a lot of appeal and some unanswered questions, and unfortunately had this inspiration because he was passing olive trees that were ripe with fruit that need to be harvested now. Unfortunately, that doesn't quite give us the time. But I think there's a lot here to consider. I love the spirit with which it is offered. There have been, sort of nuances that have been kind of observed by other folks that I think sort of resonate. And I would love to see this sort of move forward in the future. And if there are people who would like to kind of talk with Amir about informally doing something that is not officially sponsored by the HRC, then please contact Amir.
Well, and I think what's important is your model, right? Like what you're trying to create here. And I think it needs more discussion, but I like the model. Like let's not say because we can't meet this deadline, it shouldn't happen, right? Like we should start with this model and go from there, right? And see what can actually be developed, to kind of create a community building space and a community building activity. I think it is unfortunate that the timeliness and the pace of how things move, it may be challenging for this immediate time, but let's not ignore what there might be with the potential.
So what I would say is that anyone who's interested in being a part of it, just reach out to me directly, because as I said, like this is already in motion. I'm moving forward with that. And then I'll be super happy to have more buy-in from people, because that will help us, spread out the word, even if we can't officially endorse it by the city. And that's a small pilot run as we prepare for next year.
And then maybe we will hold off on sort of the official creation of a subcommittee, but look forward to revisiting that issue with the experience that was gained this year. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you for that good discussion. And I would then suggest that we move on to the second item. We're at 8:15 now. We can go beyond 8:30 if folks are willing, and there's a motion to do that. But I just want to observe that we're at that hour. And I don't have a particular suggestion on how we proceed, but I think there is a general sense that a committee to, I would say, inquire into and report back to the commission regarding the concerns that have been raised here tonight and previously in the documents that Dima alluded to that weren't presented tonight but have been transmitted to the commission earlier. That a committee be created to do that inquiry and examination and kind of report back with findings and or suggestions. Some of which perhaps the commission might undertake and some of which might potentially, of course, need the approval of council and other stakeholders, including Eat Free Together or others. So,
May I add?
kind of a quasi-motion idea. Dima, please.
May I add to?
Yes, absolutely.
It's sort of very related. So I actually wanted to propose a subcommittee that would do exactly what you're saying, but maybe broader than that, but maybe in a more immediate standpoint, we would work on particularly the October 7th coalition matter. So what I would like to propose is that we look into, identify, and report on discrimination of Arabs, Palestinians, Muslims, and their supporters and allies within the Davis community. I've personally heard about people being vilified and discriminated against, and I want to note that when I note allies, this includes many Jewish community members who feel like they have been attacked because of being allies to Arabs, Palestinians, and Muslims, so I include those in it. But we also know from national reports that these forms of racism and discrimination are on the rise. It's no surprise, as it follows a very common pattern we've seen in history. During and after the Gulf War, 9/11, and the Iraq War, we've always seen a rise in this kind of bigotry. And what we're experiencing and seeing today is no exception. So I'd like to not only just note that we should have a subcommittee, but I wanted to note a couple of things I think the subcommittee should take on. So one is that the subcommittee would gather and identify the experiences that people are having in relation to this kind of bigotry. It would create a safe space and avenue for those who've experienced this bigotry to report on it. This tends to be an underreported type of discrimination. Document and gather these stories, report back out to the HRC, Hate Free Together exec team, and City Council. Gather information also on K-12 students and families by developing a partnership with DJUSD to understand what our initiatives are in place to support curriculum around this. Ensure that Hate Free Together is aware of what the community is facing and reflects this with the appropriate resources and statements on their website. And lastly, draft a resolution to advocate against this form of bigotry and express solidarity and care for those impacted. And this may be some type of statement like you noted, Gloria. I do think, as I had thought about this, I had not necessarily been as fully aware of what October 7th Coalition was doing. So I think that this subcommittee could potentially have one very urgent matter that they need to handle, which would be the October 7th Coalition and how to either create a statement or how to deal with that particular problem, which I do think needs to be dealt with more urgently. So that was my thought on a subcommittee. I do have thoughts on those who could be on the committee. I believe Ali has maybe noted to you, Carrie, that she would be interested. I'm not sure if she expressed that to you.
With Ali not being here, she's expressed interest in being on a couple of different subcommittees, including the Civil Rights Ordinance one as well. And so we can certainly place her on a committee, and if she would like to decline at the next meeting, she can do so.
Wonderful. Great, and I think Kevin, since you brought it up, potentially you could be on the committee with the two of us, but I think we can only have 3 on the committee, so yeah. Just a suggestion.
Okay, I think, Dinga, let me just try to clarify. You described a scope that is appropriate but broader than the kind of the concerns that we heard tonight. I just want to get a sense of whether your suggestion is that the committee that is formed would be as broad as you described it. And just a note here, excuse me, that there is a Brown Act issue here too. The committees, in order to be able to meet without going through the public process of a Brown Act body, need to be advisory and temporary and sort of limited in scope. So the scope has to be kind of defined. So that's the only reason that I'm kind of asking you kind of a little bit for further clarification on what's the sort of the scope of the group that you kind of envision. Is it the sort of the broader issue, and then with potentially sort of an immediate focus on the concerns that we heard described tonight?
That's exactly how I'm thinking of it. I mean, I know that I was aware that there needed to be a clear scope, so that's why I sort of came with the bullet points around what exactly this subcommittee would work on. It would have very specific goals. It would not go beyond the scope. But my hope is that we could have a more immediate action around what we've heard around October 7th Coalition as part of an output of this subcommittee.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Connor?
Yeah, so I was also, and this might sound separate at first, but it is related. So I was considering and am considering proposing a committee or subcommittee on trying to figure out better ways to report hate incidents that is separate from the police, because as Kate mentioned earlier, I think that there's not a whole lot of knowledge in the community, even among people who are more connected, around the best ways to report hate incidents, especially separate from just calling the police, which a lot of people are like very uncomfortable with for a number of reasons. So I think us looking into that would be very helpful and important. And depending on the outcome of that committee and what the recommendations are and what is potentially, hopefully implemented, though knowing the city, who knows that timeline. But either way, it sounds like what's currently proposed for this committee could potentially change based on that. So this could be a temporary committee, so it meets the Brown Act standards by saying this is like a 6-month or year committee or something, and then it's reevaluated at that point, especially if there are other mechanisms in place that might impact what the current proposal of this committee is. But it's kind of an interim for those aspects, while larger discussions on possible ways to do that type of reporting more systematically are considered.
So Connor, a committee that looks into alternative or improved ways to report hate incidents or hate crimes without police involvement.
Yeah, and that's something
as a sort of a separate item than the ones we've been discussing so far, is what you're putting on the table.
Yes, but I do think that there are like intersections and whatnot there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's something that I've been thinking about, and I think I've also mentioned on a few occasions, especially around the Hate Free Together discussions, because that's something that I think Hate Free Together could potentially be, is a portal for those types of reports that's independent of police. But yes, that is a committee that I am interested in.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll just sort of observe generally that the connections that this group has with Hate Free Together has been sort of an issue that we have touched on in the past, and I think is probably something that needs kind of further discussion. It's possible, for example, that we might create a committee to kind of work with the Hate Free Together folks on the scope of work that the council has charged us with, which is community engagement on those issues. I think this at least arguably falls in that. And I guess we just have to think about, I think this is an important discrete issue, and I think it's been raised by other folks too. And I think we just have to decide whether we want that to be like this sort of laser focus on that particular issue, or do we want to kind of broaden it to be more generally involved with sort of concerns about how what processes we have in place for dealing with hate incidents.
Yeah, because my idea here wouldn't actually necessarily need to go through Hate Free Together, though it would kind of make sense that it would at least be a conversation with Hate Free Together, but it could potentially be something purely done through the HRC. Like there's a form on the HRC website, or there's like an HRC like ombudsperson subcommittee or something. Like those are possibilities as well. But it could also go through Hate Free Together. So yeah, I think this would be kind of a separate conversation, but it would definitely relate to what our role is within Hate Free Together. Maybe this would be part of our role within it. Maybe this would be separate from that and purely an HRC or city thing.
Okay, Rainey.
I love the ideas of both of the committees that are being proposed, and I don't have any great solution to the gut feeling I have that if I was picturing that we were creating a subcommittee that was broader in terms of like supporting everybody who's experiencing discrimination around what's happening in the Middle East right now. And so I'm very comfortable with this commission, and I feel a little concerned about having a committee that's working on the discrimination that's happening against Arabs, Palestinians, and Muslim people, and not having another committee that's looking at anti-Semitism, for example, just based strictly on the appearance that we as a commission care more about one thing than the other. I foresee like the optics of that being uncomfortable for us and maybe not an honest reflection of how we all feel that both of these are problems in our community. And I'm not proposing a solution to that, but I just want to say out loud that that feels like something that is putting forward a certain impression about what we care about that I don't know is true.
Thank you, Lee. Others? Please.
Kate, go ahead.
If you want to respond to that, but I have something more related overall, do you want to respond to that?
I was going to actually respond to Connor's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to briefly say, in terms of Hate Free Together, and Megan is also on Hate Free Together, although she's not our usual representative here. Glad to see you. That I think it remains to be seen exactly how Hate Free Together would interface with a commission like this, and that's fine, because the organization is going to be going through a strategic planning process, so that'll be part of the picture. It also prompted me, though, to think about the possibility that at some point, I could imagine that a regular part of the report to this committee or to this commission is, right, the number of things reported, the number of types of events reported, or that we would be a place to hear about that, either if it's from the police department or whether it's from some new mechanism that's tracking events or harms in the city. So just as a regular point of conversation for the commission every month to say, oh, okay, this is what's in the uptake of the reported events. Obviously, there may not.
Can I just, I have a headache and I don't think like the words that I said came out great. I'm not like, so I want to say a little more strongly that clearly from the school perspective, I am seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, that anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian is not coming to my attention directly from students. And that doesn't mean it's not there. I'm sure that it is. And but I didn't mean to say that the only reason we should consider having subcommittees for both potentially is from an optics perspective, but like actually the reality is, of course, that like both kinds of discrimination are happening, and I don't want it to appear that we are paying more attention to one than the other. So
I think that wasn't clear, but
okay,
thank you.
okay, I hope that's a little bit better.
Okay, Amir.
So I can attest, you know, as being a member of the Jewish community around here, I can definitely attest to the fact that there is a huge increase in anti-Semitism. Not being Arab, Palestinian, or Muslim, I believe that there is an increase. I would think that if within our committee we cannot have a dialogue where we engage and build bridges, but we have to deal with that in two separate subcommittees that are mostly tasked at policing, that just not seems like A, good example, B, not a good use of at least my time and energy.
So I had a comment more on Connor's. I really do think that it sort of addresses, Kate, what you brought up about you saw something and you didn't even know how to sort of bring it forward. And so I do think that there is an opportunity there. Whether it's with Hate Free Together or not, I'm not super one way or the other on that. I think it's just more figuring it out. I do think there's also some complexity with that we should just keep in mind, which is, I think one is this gives an avenue where you don't have to go through the police, which I think is very important to several communities. But I think we also have to think about the fact that there's still potentially going to be quite a lot of fear in any sort of electronic way of providing this kind of feedback, because there's fear of it getting traced back to people. And then Lainey, I just wanted to note, to your note, that you haven't necessarily heard about any anti-Arab or anti-Palestinian sentiment. I think we have to be really careful in sort of saying things like that, just because these are communities that have had very hostile reactions to any complaints that they've made. I grew up in a family that was told, just keep your head down, don't complain, you know, like, it's dangerous, people don't want to hear it. And I think that's very common in Arab and Palestinian in particular, very much so in many Palestinian families. Not all, I want to be really clear. There are lots of Palestinian families that are very, very vocal about who they are and what they stand for. But there are a lot who are very fearful. And there's a lot of people who are right now they're fearful about their jobs. They're fearful about ramifications, and they are probably they might even be telling their children, like, you gotta be careful about what you say or what you complain about. So I think we just have to be really thoughtful about sort of using anecdotal information about whether people are feeling discomfort in this community just because of those special scenarios.
Okay,
I
noted.
appreciate that, and I hope that, like, if the subcommittee happens, then finding ways of talking about reporting hate crimes, like, how can we also, either of the subcommittees could look at, even for young people, how can we provide more opportunities for them to safely feel like they can report? I'd be really interested in hearing about that.
Sorry, Laney, I didn't mean to step over you, but I just wanted to note that it's 8:35. We can continue, and I think should continue for a little bit further to try to conclude the conversation we've been having. But I think technically, according to the powers that be, we need a motion to do that. So is there a motion to continue our meeting in order to, I think, conclude our discussion, at least on this item? We also need to decide on at least one other thing, and that is the time of our November meeting, because that will otherwise conflict with the Thanksgiving Day holiday. We also will have a conflict in December, but we could potentially postpone the decision on the December date until the November meeting. But with that said, is there a motion to extend our meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Connor. So moved. And is there a second?
Can I just ask for clarification on if you want to add a time, the amount of time you'd like to extend it for, or through the end of this item, or?
I would say at least through the end of this item plus the November meeting date. If people are also interested in covering the other items though, I would be open to that. But yeah, instead of a set time, I would say through this item plus the November meeting date.
I would like to second Connor's motion that we complete this item, skip item 6C, do item 6D, and then move on to adjourning the meeting. If that is what Connor
I did just realize a subcommittee that both me and Wayne are on, along with Amir. The winter celebration is kind of timely. So I do wonder if we might want to have an update on that, but at the same time, I don't know if we would want to have a full discussion on that, and I don't know if just an update makes sense, or if there's a reason for that. So that is something that I at least wanted to mention, though, that item is obviously timely as well.
My thought, Connor, on that is that we were hoping, I think, to open up some discussion and get feedback from people, and that's probably not gonna be super productive tonight. I'll hear Amir's thoughts on it, but I wonder if the subcommittee should just meet with Carrie and share some of the thoughts that we have as a next step, and then hope that we could be on the November meeting, knowing that we're still passing along to the city the thoughts that we have, which is the timely part that needs to happen. You're okay with that, Kate? So if you're okay with it, Connor, we would just skip that agenda item.
Okay, that motion clarified. Is there, I think there's a second with Laney, from Laney. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstentions? None. Very good. Thank you for that bit of housekeeping. And let me just say where I think we are right now. And I want to state it, ask for clarification. And then I think what might make sense is to just ask for folks who haven't yet spoken and try to see if we can get consensus. I've heard kind of three ideas. One is the suggestion that the DEMA put forward to look at and report back on sort of the broader scope of anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian discrimination, or writ broadly. There was Connor's suggestion about looking at methods for reporting hate crimes, and there was Laney's observation about whether it might not be warranted to also be looking at the concerns we've heard regarding problems of anti-Semitism in the community as well. So those are the three ideas that I've heard, and I guess unless someone wants to correct me, I'm wanting to see if we can settle on those, and if there's some consensus about how to move forward, that we also identify potential members of those committees. So,
can I clarify though? I think we have two proposals and we have an observation. I don't know that we have another proposal other than an observation, and I would be really worried to consider that a proposal because there's very little information about what that looks like. What are we, trying to? There's, the scope is very unclear. So I would just note that that's an observation, not a proposal.
There was no third proposal.
okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification. I wanted to make sure I understood what Laney was saying. But I think I want to, Amir, you got your mic up, but then I want to just see if there are others who also should be heard.
So regarding the Committee on Anti-Muslim, Anti-Palestinian Discrimination and Hate in town, I think that maybe a good thing to do would be for this committee to gather information. I feel like, as not being a member, we just heard some personal testimonials, but I think that it would be really good if we could actually see, if we can see what the actual scope of that and how, what's really what's going on in town. So I think that would be maybe a first good step to see, how big of a problem, how is it manifesting, etc.
I think that tonight we heard very clearly from some of the community members how this is a very real issue here in town. And I think that we, in terms of information gathering regarding the possible formation of such a subcommittee, I think we've heard it tonight that this is a problem and a matter that needs to be resolved sooner rather than later.
Okay. Edgar, I'm going to see if I can solicit your thoughts as well.
And sorry, while Edgar is thinking, maybe I could just add an additional comment to Connor's subcommittee as well, which I also am very supportive of, because I do think that we need another means of reporting these events that does not involve law enforcement. I don't think that is, as Dima highlighted before, there's many groups. I myself am part of, a member of one of those groups that typically is hesitant of reporting such events anywhere, and especially when involves law enforcement, because, you know, there's always a fear from our communities that such, or highlighting such events might also put us at a potential risk. So I do think it's a very important subcommittee to form as well.
Okay, thank you. Edgar, all eyes are on you. Not too much pressure.
No, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts in my head right now, and I'm not settled on anything yet. Just because I feel like we've heard a lot throughout this whole last year, and it's been very heavy, and so I'm gonna wait before I make any type of decision.
Okay, well, I've heard the two proposals, and I guess I'm interested in, there seems to be a consensus about moving forward with those two ideas, unless someone corrects me. And then I think if that's the case, it's a matter of trying to see if we can get some folks assigned to that work. And I would ask for volunteers. I'm going to assume that Connor and Dima would like to be on the committees that they suggested, but that is one person per committee. As Dima noted earlier, we can have up to 3. And I'm interested in hearing whether other folks are interested in serving, because I don't think a one-person committee quite works. And the ex officio members are also eligible and encouraged to participate.
Well, I do believe that Dima had mentioned Ellie expressed an interest in that subcommittee, and that she extended an invitation to you, Kevin, as a member. So if we can maybe settle that, otherwise I think we can open it up for a third individual to express a desire to be on that subcommittee.
I'm happy to serve on any and all committees, but I'm also wanting to make sure that everybody is having an opportunity to do the work that is most interested in.
I would be happy to join Connor's subcommittee, as well as Dima's, if you were not going to be that third member. But, I would like to join Connor's subcommittee, is what I would like to say then.
Okay. Others? Any? Amir? Edgar? I'm going to spare our ex officio friends.
I'd be happy to be a liaison to the data collection committee, so, to Egypt, you know, keep it together, I'm happy to discuss, but
Well,
I need to limit my committee
yeah,
membership.
and I think as we've described Connor's committee, it is really this current vision is limited to that particular issue that you highlighted. Okay.
So, I'm sorry, this is going to be tangential for a minute, but I see that the Martin Luther King Committee, I guess, was determined after I left the last meeting. And I was on that last year, and I don't think anybody that's currently on it was on it last year, and I would be very interested in that, but I also see that it's already got 3 people. So, I mean, I can let that go and just sort of support however, but
Okay, so I did not plan this, but I really was regretting that you weren't there for that discussion, because I actually was hoping that your contributions last year, which were really so instrumental to the success of that event, might be reprised. So if you are...
So if I was to propose that I would replace Kevin Baker, potentially on the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee, then Kevin would know what bandwidth he had to do other things, for example, if that is what you're...
I would happily accede.
Okay. All right, so I would like to propose that Pickett replaces Baker on the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Subcommittee or subcommittee, whatever they are. If anybody wanted to second
Second.
that.
Hold on, we've got a couple things going.
So moved, all those in favor say aye, aye.
Hold on just 1 second.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
No, I wanted to
Okay.
go away.
Okay, caught us.
Can we do that by unanimous consent? Or do we need a roll call vote? All right.
Just
Show of hands.
ask if there's,
Okay.
you can do a quick show of hands.
Quick show of hands. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Abstentions? None. Motion passes. Thank you, Laney, for that suggestion and for your willingness to step up. And in all seriousness, you really were very helpful last year, and it was a great event. So thank you for that. Okay, so back to you, Felix, because I think you were suggesting that you would serve with Connor on the committee that Connor has proposed. And I want to see if there's anyone else who might be interested.
I would also
Kate-
be happy
Kate is willing
to-
to be a liaison, I think, she said, to the committee.
I would be happy to, but now I'm already on 2 other committees, so I certainly don't need to. But if there is not another interested third person, I'm very interested in that.
We don't need to have 3. Does 2 work?
I'd be down with 2. 3 would be nice, and it does sound like someone's schedule has just opened up. But I would be okay with 2.
Yeah, whose schedule just opened?
Yours.
Oh, mine. Okay, I'm happy to serve on that committee. So that's fine, that's great. And let's resolve that maybe then before we move forward. With that composition, is there a motion? Motion by Connor, second by Baker. All those in favor? Aye. Aye, opposed, none. Abstentions? Excuse me?
Keep going.
Yes.
I'm just trying to keep up with you.
I would just also add that I think it would be legitimately helpful to have some legal knowledge and expertise on that subcommittee anyway. So I think that would be an important role for that subcommittee.
It's the only time lawyers get any love. All right, that issue then is resolved, and we are then, I think, at the question of the composition of the committee that Dima described. And I want to just make sure that there are folks, I mean, I'm willing to serve, I think you're right. Based on what I've heard, that Ellie is also willing to serve on that committee. But I wanted to see if there's anybody else. Okay, seeing no takers. I'm happy to participate. And
I'm so sorry. I think, trying to follow you guys on type, I think I lost the exact people that were on the committee that Connor has proposed in exploring ideas for reporting. I wrote Gorman, Pickett, and Baker. Is that correct? Just you 2?
Gorman.
Oh, sorry.
Alvarez.
I apologize. Thank you. I knew I missed something.
And then the proposed composition of the other committee is outstanding is Dima, Kaplan, Baker. Okay.
Who seconded that one?
It hasn't officially been proposed yet.
I think Dima moved and Felix seconded.
I can second. I second the proposal.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
No opposition. Amir, opposed. Amir, do you want to be heard on that at all?
Well, I mean, I think that the scope is not well defined enough. In the current format, I just don't think that it's a good use of time and visibility for this commission. So,
okay, excellent, clarifying. Okay,
Hold on, sorry, I'm moving really fast, I'm struggling a little bit. Did I get that right, Amir, that you
Yes.
opposed?
okay, that motion carries, and I believe that item has concluded, am I right? Is there anything else? I'm trying to pull up the agenda now, I'm gonna look at Connor's.
There are just the two that are listed there, the landing
Yeah,
knowledge
that
board
we
and
are-
civil rights, but if nobody's
We're
proposing
gonna
them.
waive on for now, I think, in light of the time. So we, I think, agreed to skip item 6C in light of our time constraints and move then to a consideration of at least the November meeting. And here I would like to ask if Carrie would get us started.
Sure, Kevin, I think your suggestion of sort of focusing on the November meeting right now is a good one, and then at the November meeting, maybe we can consider some December options and see what we're looking at. As Kevin mentioned, the HRC meeting each falls on the fourth Thursday of the month, which every November also falls on Thanksgiving, so we always change the date of that meeting due to the city closure. And so in looking at this room particularly is very, very booked. The senior center in the room that we met at last month is available on November 21st, which is the third Thursday of November, not the fourth Thursday, but we need to make sure that we at least have a quorum. We don't need to have everybody available, but we at least need to have a quorum before we set that meeting date. So that would be a somewhat simple proposal, if that works for folks, just because it's a week earlier. December is going to be a little bit more challenging, I think, so.
Okay, let's talk just about November, then November 21st, I think is the suggestion. It would be in the senior center. I would just note that if it were possible to provide for additional public seating at the senior center. We had a number of folks tonight, I don't know what our turnout will be tomorrow or next month, but I did observe, as did some others, that there was sort of fairly limited public seating there. So with just that observation added, does the 21st work for folks?
For me, it's in direct conflict with the school board, who will be meeting in this room at that time.
Okay.
I'm also committed to be at the school board meeting that night.
We have some flexibility with time as well, right? This is going to be a special meeting, so we don't necessarily have to do it at the same time.
We could change the time, and I am so sorry, and I'm sort of embarrassed to say this, but I'm going to let you discuss this while I go take a very quick recess.
Perfectly fine.
Does it have to be on a Thursday, or can it be on a Wednesday, like?
Yes, it could definitely be on another day. I think Carrie was just observing that. Maybe the easy
do it maybe by email, with a doodle calendar, like civilized people?
Technically, when we adjourn to the time of our next meeting. So I think that needs to get nailed down nicely, but it is an otherwise very reasonable suggestion.
The 21st works for me, but I'm happy to explore other dates as well.
Okay, for the folks who have conflicts, I think it's particularly Laney, but I think Dina's made a good observation, which is there another day that week that would work for you?
Yeah, any other day that week would work fine for me, and I might be able to find somebody to go speak at the school board meeting. And some teachers just sign up for different days they're going to go speak at the school board meeting to make sure we know the school board is paying attention, right? And I've signed up for that date, so I might be able to switch with somebody. So I don't think we should plan around me, and I'll do what I can to be there, unless it's easy to shift to another date. But I don't know if Carrie has all the conflicts for this room for other dates.
Yeah, because that was my question, if we do consider a different date, it's just what is the availability of this room and what is the availability of the senior center? Like, I'd be down to do, like, the evening of pretty much any day, or, like, November 14th is also a potential option. It depends on how early we want to do things, but there's a decent chance our December meeting will be fairly early, so maybe an earlier November meeting could make sense, unless we want to have like a meeting, and then a meeting 2 weeks later.
Yeah, so, thank you, Carrie. The discussion now is whether Wednesday, the 20th, is another possible date, and/or the 14th. And of course, that involves locations and
I can certainly look into both of those possibilities.
okay, so at this point, you don't actually know though, right?
No, there's, I have to go to another department to look up in our facility reservation system to see what might be available.
I see. Well, since we need a time at this point,
Let's keep it and I'll do what I can.
yeah, okay. November 21st, then 6:30, or do you guys prefer another time?
If they met a half hour earlier, I could be here at least for if we met at 6, I could be here for a public comment. But it's, you all would be actual members.
I'm agnostic.
6 works, I might be a little bit late, so it's hard to predict. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll be back on standard time, and the sun will have long set, so 6 feels later than it does to me in the summer. So 6, if folks are willing to, might work? Okay, let's say 6 p.m. then on the 21st. Thank you, Carrie, for all that logistics.
Should we just decide December to do that?
I think what we want to do is maybe see what we're looking at, and because there's also a possibility that if things get complicated enough, as Carrie was just forecasting, that we might ultimately decide that we could skip that December meeting, or that is to say, consolidate it with our November meeting.
I know we've always proposed that in all the program planning for the 2 big events always comes up.
Yeah.
There's just so much to do.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, I don't want to assume that that's what we're going to do, but I don't want to try to resolve the issue right now either.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. If there is nothing else, I just maybe need to allow for public comment on this issue. Is there any public comment on the November meeting date? Seeing none, I think we are at the close, and we are right at 9 o'clock. I appreciate everyone's patience, your insights, your wisdom, your energy, and your passion for City of Davis. And if there's no other business, then we